system failure listeners. Nate here, broadcasting live from Brian's second bedroom in Maine, and Brian all the way down there in Rhode Island. Brian, how are you doing this week? It was nice to see you for a brief moment on Friday when you came to visit, spent the night, and then departed for a magic tourney. So that was good to see you.
Yeah, it's going pretty good. It was short but sweet, but I guess things are going pretty good. I won the Magic the Gathering tournament there in New Hampshire, so that was exciting.
Wow, you won outright? You took first, huh?
Oh, yeah, there was like 39 people.
Nice.
Battled my way through 8 rounds to victory, so it was pretty solid.
And this particular Magic tournament was located in New Hampshire, which explains why it was that you were coming back home to Maine, even if it was just for a brief few hours. I think you had maybe some lunch with your former work buddies, and then we got to hang out with you on Friday night and watch some Jersey Shore trash TV. And then you were off in the morning, without even eating the breakfast sandwich that I was making.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Well, we also got to, litigate life's deeper questions to some extent.
Always, yeah. That was much more gratifying than the garbage TV from 2010. Even though it's still a guilty pleasure to watch Jersey Shore. You have to endure their wild editing and ADD pace to the show. But it's an interesting artifact of the 2010s. We have. I don't know what it is with Memorial Day weekend, but we seem to get rain like every freaking year, Brian. And this year, no exception, 2026, eh?
It's pretty moist out there. It's no joke.
Yeah. Man, you'd like to find yourself posted up on the beach, when Memorial Day comes knocking, so you can properly celebrate summer's debut. I will admit, I usually try to avoid going to the beach before Memorial Day and after Labor Day just to keep it special. But just the way that the weather stacked up, we had like a crazy heat wave on Tuesday and Wednesday where it was like 90 up here in Maine. Did you guys get a similar heat wave down there in Rhody, Brian? Did you really experience like the peak summer heat?
Well, yeah, we had those hot, humid days and then thunderstorms roll in as it moved into the evening.
I see. Yeah. That was. I will admit that I snuck to the beach early on Wednesday morning before work. I didn't go in the water. I just went there briefly, just because I knew that it was going to be rainy this week. You could see on the weather. You could see it coming. On the local news, the WGME.com local 13 news. You could just see that it's going to be rainy this weekend. So I snuck over to the beach on Wednesday morning, just for a few minutes. I didn't have a ton of time before I had to come home and go back to work. I just woke up early, and it was just a beautiful day. So, I don't know, I kind of feel like summer is, well, even though it's rainy today, I got that feeling that summer has arrived, so I'm pleased about that.
It's upon us.
Yep.
Well, isn't the tradition on Memorial Day to try to go to Willard Beach and then get torpedoed by the parade? Isn't that how it goes?
Yes. Yeah, I forgot about that, but Willard Beach in South Portland, Brian, we would always go there on this weekend every year, and then we would forget about the Memorial Day parade every single time and get stuck in some truly depressing traffic. So I guess with the rain, we don't have to worry about that this year, hey?
Yeah, so one thing about the rain is you won't fall for that trap. Is Willard Beach the one you went to, or did you go to a different one?
No, I went to Willard. That's I contend that it's the finest beach in Portland. It's got views of 2 lighthouses, and it's a big crescent-shaped beach wherein a bunch of boats are moored, and so you can see people, rowing their dories out to their sailboat or whatever. Anyway, it just really looks Portlandy. My only regret is it's a little too short to walk. You can really easily walk what would you say, Brian? It's a quarter mile in length, something like that. It's not very big.
Well,
but
you can
the parking
keep going up and down the coast if you want.
Yeah. Not only is the view, idyllic, there's nothing finer than seeing the Portland headlight, which of course is on everyone's Chromecast background as a screensaver. So there's nothing like seeing that, and seeing multiple lighthouses to make you feel like summer's arrived and you are definitely in Maine, and make you hungry for a spot for a nice lobster roll.
Well, one thing about going to Willard Beach is there's all these really fancy houses nearby, and they're all empty.
Mm-hmm.
And
beautiful homes, no one in them. Yeah.
So you can contemplate your Marxian philosophy as you take in the rays and just ponder our existential crisis here.
It does seem like a lot of those are, second or third or homes for their real estate investments, or something like that. It used to be that you could walk through Manhattan and you would just see, even at night, and you would see all the apartments all completely, black because like the lights are out because no one lives there because the Chinese were buying up real estate in Manhattan as a way to park their money and keep it safe from the Chinese Communist Party, right? If you buy a condo in Manhattan, the party bosses can't come and seize it from you. And so, it's maybe there's something similar going on with Willard Beach.
No, well, absolutely. It seems to be the case.
Well, Brian, it has been a monster week in the news. So I think we should get to the content here and, not do too much banter at the top of the show because there's just no way we're getting through all this list of crazy things that have happened this week, eh?
Yeah, we got some spicy topics on deck.
Yeah. I think the big news today, Sunday, is yesterday the Donald came out and he had some tweet about how a peace deal is imminent with respect to the ongoing hostilities with the Iranians. I don't know, this is what, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th time we've heard this announcement, Brian. The reason, there's two reasons I believe it this time. And we'll see as the week wears on if this is another flim-flam or a bamboozle or not. But the reason that I am inclined to think that the Donald may actually be trying to broker peace with the Iranians here is because the opinion page on the Wall Street Journal is vehemently opposed. And, when the reptiles on the Wall Street Journal opinion page, they're always wrong. But it's interesting to see how they're wrong, And so here's just an example. This opinion piece is written by Mark Penn and Andrew Stein. Got no idea who these guys are, but the headline is "Don't Leave the Iran War Half Won," and then the subheadline says, "It is time to finish the job in Iran and seek peace from a position of maximum strength." And I don't really think I need to go into the article.
Well, that's hilarious. What is our position of maximum strength supposed to be? Yeah.
The last paragraph says, "So far, the Ayatollahs have kept no promises, made no meaningful peace offers, and thumbed their noses at America and at you." This was addressed to the Donald. It's time to finish.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, is that like when we, made a peace deal and then Israel started blowing up Lebanon?
Yes. Position of maximum strength. That is so bad. Anything to just keep the hostilities going. I have no doubt that the creatures who spend their time writing stories for the Wall Street Journal opinion page are going to be bought and paid for in the bag for the defense contractors. I mean, so that's these people are always wanting us to go to war, and it's interesting that the warmongering element of the political and media apparatus in this country is sounding the alarm bells over the possibility we might have some peace on Tuesday morning when the long holiday weekend's over. But crucially, in the Donald's tweet, he didn't say what the terms were going to be, just that the Straits of Hormuz would be opened according to this agreement, which has been agreed to, presumably in principle, by all parties and a few other signatories, like maybe some brass from the Pakistani government as well. But I mean, I feel like the Donald's going to have to accept defeat here. He's going to have to, I mean, you can open the Straits of Hormuz, but how can we really prevent the Iranians from charging massive tolls for the ships that pass through there? It's going to, I think it's going to be some kind of a JCPOA, right? The Obama era treaty with the Iranians that limited their ability to enrich uranium. And so I think we're going to see some kind of a deal that's similar to the one that Trump ripped up after he took office after Obama. And that we're just going to have to live with the fact that we have elevated Iran from a marginalized regional backwater to an international powerhouse on the level of China or Russia, but by making it plain to the entire world, they are the ones who control the Straits of Hormuz, and we've really laid that fact bare. So I don't know. What do you think? One last thing here, Brian, before I demand your opinion. So on the last podcast, I was talking about the fact that the interest rate on the 10-year T-note, or interest rates are drifting up as this war goes on. as the economic dysfunction that is a result of our military action looms. And so I was thinking that we would see some significant developments in the war this week, with the 10-year T-note sitting just under 4.6%. These are similar levels. These government bonds are being they're being sold at similar interest rates to the ones that caused the Silicon Valley Bank collapse in October of 2023, as you may recall, Brian. So we are really getting to the point now where I already went over it all in the last podcast, how the bond, the 10-year T-note is considered the backstop or the anchor, the price of zero risk investment, and how the rest of the investment instruments, stocks and bonds, all are all priced off of that 10-year T-note. And so I think what's happening here is that Mr. Trump has realized that the war did not go at all how some of his security advisors and how Benjamin Netanyahu told him it would, and he's going to have to now sell some kind of a defeat as some kind of a victory. So that's what I think is going on. I don't know, any thoughts on your end, Brian?
Man, well, I'd like to think we could reach a peace deal with Iran. I mean, it's if I could, maybe we should go on Kalshi and try to bet against it. I don't know how possible that is. If we were trying to be in a position of maximum strength, well, maybe we shouldn't have martyred their spiritual leader and thus radicalized the regime further. And I just don't know how we can possibly fix the escalation trap there. And I don't know what exactly these people on the Wall Street Journal opinion page imagine happening. But if they have this opinion we can't reach a peace agreement, I guess that is some kind of omen that, maybe there's things we don't understand and that a peace deal can possibly be reached. But I just don't see... the Donald's just always saying this, and there's just no way we're going to be able to retain the Strait of Hormuz. There's just no way the old status quo is coming back.
Yep. I would say the Trump administration gave away the goose. They gave away that old status quo, and it's not like you can go back to it. So, yep, I agree with that, Brian. Although I would bet on Kalshi that we will get a peace deal, just because I'm looking at what the neocons are saying on the opinion page of the Wall Street Journal, and I'm looking at where the 10-year T-note is, and I'm going, he has no choice. That's what I think.
The Donald said he wouldn't blow it, but he blew it, is what happened there.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I guess it's not dramatic. The wind down, the escalation. The de-escalation doesn't dominate the consciousness and make you, it's not as exciting or sexy. But dude, if we could just have fewer people dying, that would be great. And if we could avoid a major economic disaster, that would be great too. So we should, I think, we should root for some kind of a deal here. But I'll tell you, I'm rooting for a deal that's humiliating to the Trump administration. I'm hoping that the deal this man is forced to sign is so shameful that the America develops a serious phobia, like the Vietnam syndrome, where the public does not support any war and does not want to be caught up in the wars. Hopefully that can happen. So I guess what I'm hoping for here is an end to the dying and a restoration of traffic through the Straits of Hormuz, but a humiliating diplomatic settlement that Trump is unable to spin as some kind of a win. That's what I would like to see happen here.
Man, I'm just not sure that the people in charge really care about not wreaking financial devastation or causing crazy conflicts and whatnot. And the price of gasoline going up is good for the financial interests. And somehow Wall Street is carrying on and is still doing well, but there is the whole business with the bond markets and whatnot. Yeah, so
the stock market seems like it's got its head buried in the sand and is trying to pretend like we're not going to be faced, even with the deal this week, we're still going to be facing serious economic fallout from the that still has to work its way. The closure of the Straits of Hormuz, the consequences of that still have to work their way through the economy. We'll be feeling those effects as late as next year, like the next plant, like the amount of fertilizer that's not going to be available for the planting season in the spring of 2027, is a major factor. So. But yeah, it's the bond market is freaking out. The stock market seems like it's just hoping this will go away. I don't know.
Well, you've got these like banking and petro interests and these military industrial interests that are always making things terrible. But you do have like, I guess this is something I thought a lot about during the COVID years. You do have like the NFL, like they make a lot of money and they want people coming to their games. And you've got like, you know, your insurance industries, I guess these lesser financial industries that are, you know, powerful forces to some extent. There are people who make a lot of money. Like Walmart wants to keep selling, you know, low quality trash to people. And so maybe those forces can kind of keep things on the rails to some extent. But on the other hand, you know, I think the people in charge understand an AI apocalypse is coming, and they're just trying to get themselves set up to be in the best position possible before things really fall apart.
Yes, I think what you're saying is accurate, Brian. Just to repeat it a little bit, and you let me know if I'm getting exactly what you're trying to convey here. But there's like Donald Trump has a vested interest in not being humiliated on the world stage, you know, and not being thought of as the worst world leader like of all time, or like in Walmart, you're right, they have their business that they have to conduct, and the oil companies, you know, like I think this is good for the oil companies that aren't involved in like for our oil, like the oil companies. Because oil is sold on a global market, the closure of the Straits of Hormuz has driven up oil prices here domestically, even though none of that oil is actually coming through the Straits of Hormuz. The fact that there's less oil overall means that the prices go up and the oil companies make a tidy buck for themselves by selling us gas that they bought before the Iran war, or you know, that they're now selling us for $4.50 a gallon. But you got that on one side of the tennis net, you've got, you know, like the Donald and Walmart, but on the other side of the tennis net, you have the international banking houses. I think they're the shadowy puppeteers who pull the levers of power over and above over and above our nominal heads of state, right? Like in the way that the Pope kind of was the person who crowned the monarchs during the medieval period. You know, we've got international banking houses playing that sort of role in the post-medieval industrial revolution capitalist version of the world we're living in today. And so it does seem like there are some shadowy factions that are above Walmart corporate interests or the Donald's political interests that but you can just tell, right? Like this Iran war is not good for anyone. It's not good for it's not good for American economic interests. It's not good for the Donald's political career, you know, the twilight of his political career. It's just not good. It's good. It's great for Israel, who manages to destabilize, you know, a major rival in their region, but it's utterly useless to the United States. And I mean, you really have to reach to try to make Iran seem like a threat. You hear folks talking about how we've been at a war with them for 47 years or something. You went through this last week, Brian. It really all goes back to Mohammad Mossadegh and the 1953 overthrow of his government by our CIA, and that's the domino that set all this, you know, that set all of this disaster in motion. So yeah, this is a bad for the Donald, bad for America. You know, it's bad all around. But yet, it would appear that the Trump administration is subject to control that we can't see, that's invisible to us, the public. You know, why else would he have made the decision to invade here? It's people were telling, like Netanyahu and his own security teams, you know, his own military advisors must have been telling him this is going to go great, you know. And why would they think that it's going to go great? I did hear some rumors on Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar about the fact that that some of the Pentagon brass were strongly opposed to this invasion and cited the Strait of Hormuz as the game theory, you know, in the context of the Strait of Hormuz as the reason why we can't be invading them. But the final Lincoln log here, Brian, is that we talked about it a few weeks ago, but a few weeks back, truthout.org published an article by one of the Biden staffers, this guy Russ Hochstein. And he talked about how the Biden administration was drawing up plans they were preparing for invasion for Iran too. They thought we might have to invade Iran, so we just want to be prepared to do it. And it just goes to show that whether it's the Biden administration or the Trump administration, it doesn't matter. The shadowy puppeteers are desperate to send us to war for reasons that are all their own and clearly don't benefit America at all.
Well, I think the lens that, you know, the lizard people in charge know that the party's almost over and that like Catherine Austin Fitts is basically correct.
Yeah.
It just makes the most sense because I don't really think what's going on is good for Israel in the long term. It doesn't seem to be good for the U.S. in the long term. But if they think the party's almost over and they're just trying to, loot the coffers one more time here and set themselves up before the end of civilization as we know it, well, that would make a lot of sense. And I don't know, man. Like I was very certain that things were coming. I had these apocalyptic feelings like 5 or 7 years ago, maybe especially during the COVID or something. And then I don't know. I thought the power of the system was was just going to carry on, And now I'm extremely out.
You mean the system has so much momentum that it can just that it can overcome adversity?
They weren't. I don't know. The plan wasn't to just have the system collapse and move on to some other system, and that the status quo was going to essentially carry on through our lifetimes and probably several more. But man, it's just really hard to imagine at this point. So I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how it plays out. I mean, it's hard to imagine things really changing, but I mean, a lot of crazy stuff's happening, and there's more that we're going to get into here. So,
yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, I just think your invocation of Catherine Austin Fitts, who, of course, is the former Assistant Secretary for Housing and Urban Development under George H.W. Bush, the first Bush president, and her discovery of trillions of missing dollars from the financial system, and her assertion that the elites are well aware that capitalism has a ticking time bomb built into it, and that it can't reproduce itself infinitely into the future, and that therefore the elites in our society are constructing a parallel system to migrate us all into when the end finally arrives for capitalism. And so that's where my thought went when we first invaded Iran. It was so obviously a terrible idea. There was so obviously nothing in it for America that it really seemed like the only conclusion I could come to was that maybe the shadowy puppeteers that run the international banking houses were ready to pull the plug and begin the migration of us all into that new system. And I still think that's what's going on. I still am of that opinion.
All right.
Yeah. Well, you said it, Brian. We got 1,000 things to get to. Next shocking thing that happened this week. And if you don't mind me raising the curtain a little bit, you seemed like you were pretty I don't want to say that you were like wildly upset, but you seemed like substantially upset by this by the seating of Thomas Massie's 4th Congressional District with tens of millions of AIPAC dollars to try to sway the election. And successfully doing so this past Tuesday in the Republican primary down there in Kentucky. What do you say, Brian?
Well, yeah, I mean, they spent like $30 million to overthrow Thomas Massie.
Yeah.
But, basically, AIPAC pretty much, took credit for making this happen, on a tweet. And, there's this. They're trying to say that it's like an anti-Semitic idea that, I don't know, they bought this election, but and so they say, well, no, Donald Trump won this election, but that doesn't explain the $30 million that they had to spend to make this happen.
Right.
And they made these AI, ads where Thomas Massie, AOC, and Ilhan Omar are going into a hotel for some kind of tryst or something, and basically using these ads to confuse boomers. And this is going to be the first real example of AI causing destruction in our society.
Yeah. That's an interesting take. Just to repeat it, these thruple AI videos of Thomas Massie and the Democratic politicians that everyone in Kentucky presumably hates, but it does seem like the $30 million and the skullduggery of those AI videos does seem to have worked. And for those who don't remember, Thomas Massie, of course, is the guy that reached across the aisle to California Senator Ro Khanna and conspired to force the hand of the Donald administration to release the Epstein files. So that's what this is. This man stepped out of line by actually actually gesturing towards protecting the victims of the of this sex trafficking ring, and for that, his political career, AIPAC has to come down hard on his political career. But I don't know, man. It's like, it's obvious. I mean, it is true that the $30 million worked, and that Thomas Massie, starting in 2027, will no longer be a representative for Kentucky's 4th Congressional District. But on the other hand, think of the political capital they had to burn to make this happen. Right? Everyone can see that. Like the idea that Jeffrey Epstein, it's like, well, the man was almost certainly CIA. Was he Mossad? He was his female counterpart there, Ghislaine Maxwell, of course, is the son of Robert Maxwell, who was a Mossad asset or a Mossad agent. And so it's like, well, was Epstein involved in the Mossad? But the fact that AIPAC that comes and deposited all this money in Thomas Massie's district makes it seem a hell of a lot like Jeffrey Epstein had something to do with Israel. So I don't know, man. I think that this was a costly victory. Could we maybe, in my wildest dreams, maybe this could even turn out to be what we'd call a Pyrrhic victory, where you achieve tactical success, but the tactical success comes at a strategic failure.
Well, yeah, I mean, how many elections can they afford to spend like $30 million on like these like random districts to try to change congressional seats? But we're going to be in for it, like, or you're going to be in for it up there in Maine, like with this Graham Plattner versus Susan Collins election. It's going to be a crazy campaign, and you're going to get hit with these AI commercials, I'm sure. And that's just going to be an intense election. And so is like $30 million like a drop in the bucket to these people, or does this like wear them down over enough elections is like the question.
I don't think that their literal financial capital matters. I don't think the expenditure of $30 million means anything to these folks, but the expenditure of political capital has been substantial. I think that the ouster of Thomas Massie came at a dear price to the shadowy forces that are trying to manipulate international geopolitics.
Well, this election costs $30 million, right? So I think the next one's going to cost, $35 million or more, right? So certainly in that sense, I mean, this just makes people increasingly upset, and they're going to have to, dig deeper in each one of these elections, right?
The stat I've been hearing bandied about is that this was the most per capita. So you take the amount of money spent on the election and divide by the number of people inside the district you're trying to affect. So like national campaigns, they cost more than $30 million, but they cost billions. And like what did Kamala Harris blows like $6 billion. But there's a lot more people you're trying to influence. So if you talk about how many dollars each individual vote is costing us, this is the most expensive election of all time.
Hey, I just want to see that's interesting. How many people live in Kentucky District 4. So 776,000 people. So what's 30 million divided by 776,000?
706,000, you say?
760,000. Yeah, 776,000.
776,000. Okay. Yeah, so that's yes, okay. That's like almost $400 a person, a little less. It's like $386 a person, $387 a person. Pretty expensive.
That's pretty crazy. You could just send a check to each person for $400, basically. Well, it'll just be really interesting to see how much the next one costs.
So just as a sidebar on this whole Massie thing, there was another thing that happened this week was the Donald created this this anti-weaponization fund, and it's a $1.776 billion anti-weaponization fund, which is supposedly for the January 6thers, but also the Donald and his family can access it, and so
a slush fund,
yeah. So this fund has caused some consternation on Capitol Hill, so much so, and I'm entering this Wall Street Journal article as my evidence for why I think that that this week cost both the shadowy forces that control international geopolitics and the Trump administration, why this Pyrrhic victory came at a dear cost to them. Because of the obvious corruption surrounding this $1.776 billion anti-weaponization fund, the Republican senators are revolting. And so the headline in the Wall Street Journal this week was "The Week That Broke Trump's Control Over Congress." The subheadline reads, "GOP senators fought back after Texas endorsement and creation of slush fund. I just think that this idea that the Donald can just, with his influence, reach into the 4th District of Kentucky and topple Thomas Massie is that's the narrative he would like to project, but really it's about the $30 million from AIPAC. And meanwhile, the Donald is facing a revolt in the Republican ranks over his corrupt slush fund. So I don't know, man. I think that the idea that the Donald's political influence has probably never been lower than it is at this very moment after his cover-up of the Epstein files, his launching of a new war, both in direct contravention of his campaign promises. And now he is doubling down on that strategy by going after the man who made the Epstein files public. And I just think he's just hurting himself with these moves. I already said it. His political influence has never been lower than it is on Memorial Day weekend of 2026.
Well, I just don't know anyone who. I mean, his grassroots support is completely squandered, and I just don't think he has any genuine support among anyone who has any force of will, so to speak.
Yeah. Yes. Well, man. I think that the only people that are supporting the Donald at this point are the Fox News watching, 55 and up demographic. I mean, I don't think anyone. If you look at the the demographic breakdown of the polling in Kentucky's 4th Congressional District, it was all the 55 and up people that voted for whoever the scrub is that they installed. The guy didn't bother to do any debates or anything. He was just kind of installed. It's all the older Fox News watching people. It's people still getting their news from the corporate media. Yes, I do that with the Wall Street Journal, but I do so with the understanding that the Wall Street Journal is going to omit important facts, and so I have to have that's why I watch Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar. But if you're just watch Fox News, that's your only source of news, you're adrift on a sea of ignorance. What were you going to say, Brian? Well,
I mean, just the baby boomer demographic has just been running the country since the 60s or so, and so it's just the end of that demographic. It's just also another thing along with the coming AI apocalypse, right? That makes it clear that the lizard people in charge are setting themselves up for the end here, right? Because once that demographic dies off, things just are going to change dramatically, and that's just another thing, right?
Yeah, support for the unconditional support for the state of Israel is something that's going to collapse along with the boomers. It must be collapsing with them, even among that demographic. But I mean, there's just no way after the genocide in Gaza got streamed in 4K to everyone's mobile devices that there's going to be any way for the younger crowd to ever support this. And it sure. It sure is a hell of a time to be alive, Brian. You said it. Major demographic changes, major economic changes. We are looking at one version of the world being washed away and a new version of the world being born. And it sure is chaotic and confusing.
Sure is.
Other news this week, Brian, the 2024 autopsy report, which the DNC tried to suppress, had just under pressure. The DNC chairman had to release it, and it was a shameful serving of AI slop. I read a few pages of it. It was horrific. Now I didn't read the whole thing, but what I'm understanding is that there's no mention of the Gaza genocide, of rampant inflation, or of Joe Biden's dotage anywhere in this report. And you would think those would be major major factors in the election.
So the autopsy, the 2024 election is what we're talking about.
That's it. Yep, you're right. I forgot to mention that. This is I should have been more clear, but this is they had some kind of an internal document. This guy, the DNC chairman, this buffoon named Ken Martin, was going around talking about it, and then they decided not to release it. And I don't know. I don't know if they decided not to release it because it was barely literate, and it was embarrassing that they paid some consulting firm for this, or if it was because the total lack of mention of the obvious factors in the 24 election were just nowhere in sight. So I don't know which shame prompted them to try to sweep this thing under the rug, Brian. But it's hilarious that it got released.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's tempting just to vote like Democrat, like, up and down the voting ballot in the next election. But that's really not the solution, right? And, well, voting for Graham Plattner is like a no-brainer, is one good thing about living in Maine. And I'm just not sure who would be like that down here, but it's about voting. What you need is like a non-establishment shill to vote for,
That's
right?
it. We need the actual Bernie Sanders wing, right? The actual Bernie Sanders policies, the ones that were super popular. The one that the guy that was beating the Donald in the head-to-head polls in 2016, right? Like if the Democrats would just accept the populist policies of the New Deal that made them what they are, the populist policies of the New Deal that are so desperately needed, the populist policies of the New Deal that would make the economy run as smoothly as it did in the middle of the 20th century. We can't have like the Democrats are so corrupt that they try to avoid they get paid by their corporate donors to avoid having Bernie Sanders come in and implement his policies, and that's why they had to step on the scale, right? It was the day before, 2 days before Super Tuesday, they had Tom Steyer, Amy Klobuchar, and Pete Buttigieg. Obama called these three and got them to drop out of the race, and then the fourth person, Elizabeth Warren, who was kind of like Bernie Sanders light. She was she stayed in the race to divide the socialist Democrat vote. And obviously there's the lawsuit from 2016 where Debbie Wasserman Schultz got sued, and they had to admit that the CNN was colluding with the DNC to favor Hillary over Bernie. I mean, so this is really, if you want to win an election here, it's not rocket science. You can easily win the elections. It's just the problem is that they're being paid not to do those things that they need to win elections by the corporate donors. And of course, it was the Clintons who pioneered this in the 1990s after the labor unions were gutted by offshoring all the manufacturing jobs to China in the 70s. Their funding and political power collapsed. And the Clintons, after the Reagans and after George H.W. Bush, the Clintons arose with a new strategy of taking donations from corporations instead of from labor unions, and so we don't really have any counterweight at all to corporate interest in our legislature, and that is what has led us to this unhappy terminus.
It sure has.
Whoosh. Brian, speaking of the Democrats, former Congressman Barney Frank died this week. He's one of the he's like a gay icon. He was one of the first, or maybe most prominent openly gay legislators in the country. He's one of these Massachusetts guys. His name is on the Dodd-Frank bill, which was the legislative response to the 2008 financial crisis. I mean, Brian, all these things are admirable. Mr. Frank has done in his life, but I don't know, man. The thing I'm always going to remember Barney Frank for is Donald Trump's 2011 tweet about him. Do you remember this thing?
Who could forget?
Here's the tweet from Don. And again, this is December the 21st, 2011. And I think Barney Frank, he was addressing Congress. I can't remember why, but Donald saw fit to tweet out. Barney Frank looked disgusting, nipples protruding in his blue shirt before Congress. Very, very disrespectful. That is so funny. I mean, the Donald may be corrupt. He may be a henchman of entrenched interests, and he may be one of the greatest disappointments this country has ever had, but man does know how has some comedic timing. That's hilarious.
Yeah, if only things had turned out differently somehow, or I don't know. That was hilarious.
It was good stuff. Oh yeah, man. It's just whenever I think of Barney Frank. So rest in peace. I hope he took that joke in good spirits, or he took it well. I hope he took it in sportingly. It's really funny. Okay, so Brian, the big thing this week, though, the thing we really got to talk about, the thing that excited me was that Dr. Eric Weinstein made a little stop by the old JRE, which is always must-listen pod for me. What do you think, Brian? I know you're excited for Eric Weinstein too. I don't know if you would call him your favorite podcast guest, but he's certainly mine.
Well, I mean, it was a fascinating podcast, and let's see. Well, he was basically saying, well, he said a lot of things, but yeah, I mean, he's talking about concepts that are difficult to wrap my head around, like string theory being sort of an invalid inquiry, or at least we have this thing where we're not really, our physicists aren't really allowed to challenge the string theory paradigm, and they get ridiculed if doing so. And he was suggesting that maybe string theory is it's like this bait and switch tactic, and they force it on like other countries, or it's like to confuse the scientists and the military complexes like in other countries. That was like a fascinating idea. And then that he and some of his physicist friends are getting together and just trying to solve or advance the scientific paradigm on their own, which is exciting news.
Yes, indeed. So, people who are smarter than you are, it's really hard to understand them. The smarter they get than you are, like the harder it is to understand them. I love listening to Dr. Weinstein because he's the smartest person that I can still understand most of the time. So it makes it for very edgy listening for me. And you hit the nail on the head exactly there, Brian. His thesis, his contention, is that in the years after the nuclear tests in Alamogordo, Mexico, and the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the U.S. military, it became real obvious to the powers that be that physics, science, is a matter of the utmost national security, and that it had to be brought. You couldn't have something so dangerous being openly practiced in like the university system where the sciences have normally been nurtured in our Western civilization. I suppose maybe even since the days of the famous academies in Athens that closed by the Emperor Justinian in the 6th century. But like that's where so we get like the Greek life from, the sororities, fraternities with their Greek letters. But Weinstein's notion here is that string theory is it's nonsensical. It doesn't make any actual predictions and is therefore unscientific, and that it is a placeholder to prevent. So essentially the idea was to cloak subsequent scientific progress after the hydrogen bomb, cloak it, remove it from the university system, and give the university system string theory to play with, to keep them amused and occupied and throw them off the scent. Pretty much how you understood Dr. Weinstein's testimony, Brian?
Yes. I mean, one thing that was fascinating is he brought up the case of this journalist who stumbled onto this town in Arizona, I guess, or like near Los Alamos, right?
Yeah. And he stumbled into Los Alamos. Yeah.
And he wrote like a report about how there's some other scientists like Einstein, and they're working on this crazy weapon. And so he like released this reporting, and
it was great. They read it on the air. It's so funny. This guy was just like a random reporter in Cleveland. He went on vacation in New Mexico, stumbled into Alamogordo, and then he broke the story in whatever paper he worked for, the Cleveland Tatler or whatever it was. And you can still find this. Document online today. But yeah, he's like, the town has run by two people. One guy who takes care of all the secrecy and all of the logistics, moving waste out and food in, and water in. And another guy who is like a new Einstein, meaning, J. Robert Oppenheimer, who is the one who's building a terrifying, doomsday device. And it just seemed like a crazy conspiracy theory in 1944 until the next August when we dropped those bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Interestingly, Vice President Harry Truman had no idea that this bombs existed, that the Americans were developing these bombs, and had to be briefed upon the death of FDR, the president, when he assumed office, which is really, really wild. Like the Soviets knew about the nuclear tests in Alamogordo. They had a German guy named Fox, Fuchs, just like the German spelling for the animal, Fox. Anyway, he turned out to be a Soviet asset. So it's interesting, like the Soviets knew about it, but our own vice president didn't. So there's always that trope that says that, the government is incompetent. Have you ever been to the DMV? There's no way they could keep a secret. But it's like they kept nuclear blasts in the deserts of New Mexico from the vice president of the United States. That's pretty good. I mean, and from the general public. I think that the ability to keep secrets and to conspire secretly is, I feel like the nuclear tests are a consummate demonstration of that ability.
Yeah.
But that doesn't. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Well, and just so like Weinstein's point there is that, it's just there's just this whole question of like UFOs and whatnot, and obviously it's an increasingly pressing issue, and the Donald said he's going to be releasing information about it, and it's just like how are these things being developed? And Weinstein's point was that it's it has to be developed like kind of in plain sight, but secretly. And I guess he thinks it's happening at some college in New York.
Well, that's where the CUNY in New York, which is on Long Island. I think that they were saying it was upstate New York, but I believe it's on Long Island. Yeah, the idea, and I don't know my own history. I'm just repeating what Dr. Weinstein said, but the idea here, I think, is that this technology was developed in like the late 60s or early 70s at CUNY, one of these colleges in New York. But then these secrets are housed within defense contractors, right? Because if the government itself puts a UFO that they recovered in Roswell in a hangar, then the public can Freedom of Information Act request information about it. Right? They can FOIA information about that hangar. But if you put the wreck of the UFO in, say, a Lockheed Martin hangar in California, well, then now the public can't FOIA that, right? The Lockheed Martin can keep it secret. So that seems to be what Dr. Weinstein is talking about here. To get in a little bit more specifics, obviously it was in the late 1600s that Isaac Newton formalized what we call Newtonian mechanics. Right, in your high school physics class, they give you like one of those Pinewood Derby cars, and you run it down a track. And based on the angle of the track and the mass of the car and the coefficient of friction between the wheels and the track itself, you can calculate at what time the Pinewood Derby car will cross the finish line, right? Newtonian mechanics. And it wasn't until the early 20th century that Einstein came out with his theory of general relativity, his suggestion that space and time are part of the same fabric, and that Newtonian physics is just one small example. He called it special relativity, meaning our paradigm that we live in is a special example of this idea of general relativity. And we also have on the very small side quantum mechanics, which is spooky enough and been the subject of many a discussion on this fine podcast, Brian. The idea of string theory is that it bridges the gap between the macro level Einsteinian general relativity and on the extreme micro level quantum mechanics by suggesting that these zero-dimensional points, electrons, protons, neutrons, quarks, what have you, but these are actually strings, and that the same string can vibrate in such a way as to give you like an electron, or another string could vibrate in such a way as to give you a quark or something like this. So I don't know. It doesn't really, like, okay, well, we can't really test that theory. It just seems like a Chinese finger trap that we've been given to play with, and it doesn't really lead us anywhere. Meanwhile, and I really love this explanation. So this is good. We all have Google Maps on our phone, right? Like where you can pinch to zoom, right? You pull up your Google Maps and there's your face, and you can zoom out by pinching in or zoom in by pinching out, right? We all understand that. But like a book, you can't pinch to zoom. And Einstein's comparison was that the Einsteinian general relativity model is like a book that you cannot pinch to zoom, right? It has a speed limit at the speed of light. It says it suggests that you could never travel faster than the speed of light. The closer, the faster you go, the heavier you get, the more mass you have. The more mass you appear to have. You can understand, like if you slam on the brakes in the car, right, you feel like you're heavier, right? But when the car or like an elevator is a better example, right? When an elevator goes up, you feel heavier. When it goes down, you feel lighter, right? So the idea behind relativity is that distance, like the physical distance you travel and the time that's passing are like traveling north and east, right? If you travel north 100 miles an hour, if your speed limit's 100 miles an hour, Einstein's speed limit is essentially saying if you're traveling north at 100 miles an hour, you cannot be traveling east at all. If you're traveling east at 100 miles an hour, you cannot be traveling north at all. And here, north and east stand in for space and time, right? So the faster you move through space, the more time slows down, and that creates this speed limit effect. And of course, if we're going to ever traverse the cosmos, we're going to be able to need to pinch to zoom, right, to get around that speed limit. So the idea here is that Einstein's theory of general relativity, which I just kind of tried to outline, that has the speed limit, right, that is like a book where you cannot pinch to zoom. Reality, right? So we've got this reality on the one hand, and we got a model of reality on the other hand, and the model doesn't pinch to zoom, but reality does pinch to zoom. So we need a new model of reality to replace the old, outdated one in just the way that Einstein's theory of general relativity displaced Newtonian mechanics, right? Newtonian mechanics just turned out to be one special example of general relativity. And so if you can pinch to zoom, right, that a craft that could pinch to zoom, right, it's just how these UFOs behave, right? They move around, and they make turns that would turn any kind of a biological pilot into a jelly from the force of the G-turns. But these things can just flit in and out of existence. They can move in through the air. They can move through water just like it's nothing, right? Because what they're doing is traveling by pinching to zoom. So anyhow, that's the best recap I could give of Dr. Weinstein's performance on the JRE. Brian, did I miss anything? Did I say anything? Did I leave out anything important here?
Well, that's all very well articulated, Nate, and quite a bit better than I could do. Ultimately, it kind of comes down to a question of like who you're going to trust on talking about these rather complicated matters, right? And so like Weinstein is basically try to paint him as like some kind of kook in like the kind of establishment narrative. And so just as a question of who you're going to trust, well, I did find a rather fascinating tweet from Owen Benjamin, who was on the Tucker Carlson podcast recently. And so I just want to bring up this video of Eric Weinstein, of Stephen Hawking. And just give me 1 second to grab it here.
Yeah.
And I want you to let me know what you think.
I have not seen this, so I'm excited.
All right. Let me just get it pulled up here. 1 second. And it's loading. Oop. Okay, hang on. Okay. So before Stephen Hawking had like the cybernetic voice or whatever, it turns out that he had some kind of interpreter, kind of like I guess Helen Keller had some person that she worked with and whatnot. And so, well, let's see. I got to share my screen here. Are you able to hear this, Nate?
I heard the chirp saying that your screen was shared, so I believe I'll be able to hear this.
I think I knew from about the age of 9 or 10 that I wanted to be a scientist. Most of my activities, like playing with model fireworks, or model railways, or playing complicated games, was aimed in some...
Okay, so that's basically it, right? So you've got Stephen Hawking here, and he's got some kind of interpreter. And, Owen Benjamin was joking it's like Han Solo and Chewbacca. And so you've got Stephen Hawking like just making these like ramblings. And then this other guy's making like these generous interpretations of the things that he's saying. And is there any way it's possible that his mutterings could somehow be articulated into what this other guy is saying is my question for you.
Yeah, it does seem like his interpreter is aggressively filling in some cracks here. So that is deeply suspect. Of course, we'd be remiss not to mention that Stephen Hawking, one of these eminent physicists who found himself on Epstein Island, with a couple of hot chicks on either side of him in a nice drink with an umbrella in it. I think there's a picture of him in such a state. It's like, the connections here between the UFOs, the nuclear tests in Los Alamos, and the Epstein, like that. That's what Stephen Hawking is one of those connections, of course. Epstein had that ranch that he purchased outside of Los Alamos back in the 80s, and there's some video from the Epstein files where Epstein is talking about the fact that he had purchased this ranch outside of Los Alamos to keep an eye on the scientists, to engage the scientists that were being systematically fired from the Los Alamos National Labs because we were winding down our war with the Soviets in the 80s, I guess, or maybe the early 90s, and we were using the peace dividend to fire all of our nuclear physicists and whatnot. So he wanted to be there to pick up some of the disgruntled scientists that the U.S. government discarded so callously. And of course, Epstein was famous for wanting to meet with all of the prominent physicists. He met with Eric Weinstein, of course, at his that townhouse in Manhattan. And like as I started this whole comment with, Dr. Stephen Hawking, also apparently a enthusiastic participant in the goings-on at Epstein Island.
Well, to me, this video here is just I mean, Eric Weinstein, he just seems, I don't know, like he sounds like someone who's legitimately making like a good faith attempt to like wrestle with the issues. And man, this is so like he did this podcast with Joe Rogan, and then I just saw this came up on the Twitters by happenstance, and man, this is just an absolute like grenade to me to like the narrative that like Weinstein's supposed to be some kind of kook. It's just like it's just absolutely shocking to me. And the Han Solo Chewbacca analogy just extremely fitting. Man, that is just,
it's so funny because the guy does kind of sound like Chewie when he's trying to talk.
It just seems like it's just wildly farcical. Man, I think that is crazy. I don't know, I don't know. It's just mind blowing to me.
I used to have that book, Universe in a Nutshell, purportedly written by Stephen Hawking. And I used to really admire his mind and his work. But good Lord, it just does seem like Epstein himself, maybe this guy was some kind of a construct or something. I don't know, but it's really strange that his translator is taking a few Chewbacca howls and turning them into this, those lengthy sentences. That is really bizarre. Why isn't the journalist doing the interview saying anything? Like, why in the fullness of the entire video, I mean, is it acknowledged at all, or are we just supposed to accept this at face value?
No, I mean, this was just like accepted at the time, right? I mean, and Stephen Hawking, I mean, the Epstein business wasn't really a thing until somewhat recently, right? And I don't think there's been any real critique of Stephen Hawking until recently. So,
well, even if you believed, I mean, if I had interviewed Stephen Hawking in 2005 when I was a big fan of his, like, I would have been like, how are you the interpreter getting all this from just a few grunts and groans? Like, what? This doesn't quite seem right. It seems like I'm interviewing you and not the man himself. What is this? I don't know. Very odd. Eventually, Hawking, he had his own computer voice, of course, famously. And I just wonder, I wonder what he would say if in that computer voice of his about this very, very strange video you just showed me.
Yeah, Stephen Hawking, he's on the Division Bell, the Pink Floyd album, and he on the song Keep Talking, he's like, for millions of years, man lived just like the animals until we learned to talk. And then it goes through the song.
Forgot about that.
So there's your Pink Floyd connection of the day. And man...
I hate to close out a system failure podcast without any Pink Floyd references at all. So it's very good, Brian.
We'd be remiss.
I just got a few other curiosities that came out this week, Brian. I just wanted to run them past you here as we get close to the end of the pod. Number one was this Ashley St. Clair. You must have heard of this broad. Ashley St. Clair, who agreed to sign a contract to have one or more of Elon Musk's babies. We all know Mr. Musk is fond. He worries about underpopulation or population collapse, so he's fond of having many, many children with many, many partners, and she is one of them. And you may have seen the video that came out this week where she posted up on her socials where she is claiming that Elon Musk unleashed his, quote, anomaly in the matrix, unquote, in order to help win in 2024 using his Starlink satellite fleet. It was very, very interesting. I've heard a bunch of reports from the muckety mucks who were down in Mar-a-Lago on election night in November of 24, Brian, and there was this famous anecdote where Elon Musk left Mar-a-Lago early in the evening, saying he could see that the election was in the bag for the Donald because he had advanced metrics or advanced information. I've heard about this too, like with the Biden administration, or I think it was when the not the Biden administration, but the Kamala Harris campaign. There's a lot of talk about internal polling showing this or that. It seems like the campaigns have access to much more sophisticated and much better polls than the ones we, the public, are normally subjected to in the media, and that they just have better info, and that the polls we get are fake or designed to make it seem like a close, neck and neck race to keep us interested or something like this.
Well, who could forget, like towards the end of the Biden administration, I mean, I guess they were saying that Biden was doing well in the polls, but apparently, according to their internal polling, it indicated at some point that it was time to move on.
Yeah.
Well,
just like...
Well, and just who could forget the infamous "Don't Tase Me" guy who was like raising questions to John Kerry about like the shenanigans that went down. You remember this guy? who
Yeah, I think that was at FSU in Gainesville, Florida. I haven't thought about that in years. Continue your thing. That's interesting, Brian. Interesting connection.
he was just trying to raise some questions about like election irregularities. In the Kerry, that would have been versus Bush. Yeah, in like 2004, right? And he wouldn't be silenced, and he got tased. And well, I think just these elections. I mean, if the Thomas Massie election's any indication, I mean, the public support has something to do with what happens, but I mean, it's not everything, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. By the way, I think I said FSU in Gainesville. That's UF. Of course, FSU is in Tallahassee. the Floridians will be remiss if I don't make the correction there. But yeah, I forgot about that guy who was raising questions about the election in 2004, and then they tased him and removed him from the audience chamber. And yeah, his famous line was, "Don't tase me, bro." That is really interesting.
Just the elections are just kind of questionable, but obviously they're about keeping the lizard people in control, right? So it's not surprising.
So. All right, and the last thing I got this week, Brian, is this thing made the round. It was big on socials on like Thursday or Friday. It was everywhere. I think Breaking Points ended up treating it at some point. But this bizarre appearance on Fox News, we talked earlier about the hopelessness of the poor denizens of Kentucky's 4th Congressional District, watching Fox News and getting all their information from Fox. Well, on Fox News this week was purportedly retired Vice Admiral Robert Haywood. The individual who appeared on screen appeared to be wearing a latex mask, and you could see at the neck of the person, where you could see the lip of the mask, the edge of the mask, and it really looked for all the world like they had someone dressed up as Rear Admiral Haywood, retired Rear Admiral Haywood, to give some kind of a expert testimony. I don't know, dude. It was really strange. I think, Brian, you have the video queued wherein it has a picture of the actual retired Admiral Robert Haywood next to this man wearing a mask, apparently trying to pass himself off as the Admiral. I don't know, man. What did you think of it, and can you show us the video?
Well, I've pulled it up here. Are you able to see it?
I'm not. I think you stopped sharing your screen. You got to share it again.
Let's give it a try again here. I had it all queued up, but I guess it didn't work. Here we go. Can you see it now?
No, I'm not. I only see me and you. I don't see the third. Box.
Dang,
you might be having a technical issue there.
Well, you should just click it on your end, and we don't really need to hear the audio, and we can just kind of react to it together here.
So I'm clicking it, and there it is. Yeah.
I mean, so you can just see the two faces side by side, and they're trying to say it's some kind of like lighting issue, but you can just tell by the way the shadows moving around that slit at the bottom of his neck. But I'd also encourage you just to look at the area around his eyes, and they're just like obviously different, and he's like way too smooth on the Fox News presentation where he's wearing a mask. And it's just like a hilarious thing for them to drop on us as, this fraudulent election. It took place in Kentucky's 4th District. And it's just like, obviously, the dude's wearing a mask, man. I don't know what's going on, if this is supposed to be like a different person or the same guy wearing a mask. Maybe he had like a bad case of acne that day, so he just threw on the old latex mask there.
That could be it, but I'm just looking at the neck area in this video. The neck, not the seam but Admiral Haywood's actual neck from May 18th of this year. So these two, I mean, it's like his neck, like his gullet, right? It looks like a real man's neck, a real man in his 60s neck in the before image, but in the after image, it's all smooth and latex looking. And the good Admiral is substantially shinier in his latex masks than he is in the regular footage of him from a week or two ago.
It goes back to the Jim Carrey incident at that awards festival in France or what have you. And I mean, they talked about these masks like in Mission Impossible, probably multiple of those movies. And I mean, these latex masks are like a real thing. You can see people throw them on, and it's pretty convincing. And yeah, I mean, this is just like they do this. I mean, the idea is that they kind of have to like kind of get our consent to let them do the things that they do. And I mean, it seems like not a coincidence is what I'm trying to say, that like this just happened. And I think it does not bode well for the I don't know, the status quo persisting, I guess. It seems like an intentional move, like obviously, right?
Oh yeah, I think it reeks of desperation. Like they're really trying to keep this conception of reality going that we had. The post World War II conception of reality. They're trying to keep it going. They're trying to keep it on the tracks, but it's getting harder and harder and harder, and they have to resort to more and more desperate tactics. And trotting out someone to impersonate, retired Admiral Haywood seems like a pretty desperate move to me. It mirrors what I perceive to be desperation on the part of the Donald administration with respect to the war in Iran, that thing we started the show with.
Well,
it does seem... Go ahead.
I don't think it's a matter of desperate. I mean, I think it's intentional that they put on a guy who's obviously wearing a mask. And I mean... so I don't really know if it's like a move of like desperation. It's like what they're saying is that we're in control and there's nothing you can do about it, is like the point of the message. Is what they're trying. That's the message they at least would like to convey.
Well, I mean, it could be, but why would Rupert Murdoch and Fox News agree to this? I mean, it just makes them look like a hack journalistic outfit. But they obviously did agree to it one way or another.
Well, the whole point, I don't know, I mean, is to get you to. It's like from George Orwell's 1984. They want you to deny the evidence of like your eyes and ears and just obey the party message, right? Yeah,
it was their final, most essential command in the closing pages of George Orwell's 1984 to not believe your own senses.
So yeah, the way to describe this is Orwellian.
Steve Bannon would call this flooding the zone, where you just put out a bunch of confusing, contradictory disinformation, some of it true, some of it not true, and just people have no idea which way is up. You think that's what this is, eh?
Yeah, it's just to like muddy our conception of reality.
I have watched the clip any number of times, but I've been so focused on the mask, I didn't really listen to what Robert Hayward was saying. I wonder what point he was making, and if if the point, and if there was some reason why the real admiral wouldn't make this point, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's as simple as a bad acne day, as you said. But it sure is curious, and it's an interesting data point. And maybe you're right, Brian. Maybe we're spending too much time kicking this around, and not, and just like the powers that be want us to do.
Well, I think his message is like, I don't know, advocating for more war in Iran, essentially.
Interesting.
Or trying to say that escalation isn't going to be a disaster.
Well, that would seem like something that they would want to send out. That would seem like a point they would want to make, here as we hopefully are on the eve of some kind of a peace resolution. So they need to trot out, Pentagon experts to try to pretend that there is some kind of a maybe potential military solution to what's going on in Iran. I mean, you got to think if there was a military solution, they certainly would have tried it by now, right? And the best they come up with was blockading the blockade. And so, I surely do not know what to make of it, Brian. Now, your theory seems like a good one, though.
All right.
Alrighty, well, this is always the moment of the show where I invite you, our vaunted listener, to pay us a little visit over at systemfailure.org. We'd love to hear what you have to say and what your opinions are. And if so, what you can do is visit us at systemfailure.org and then, click on the About page and click on the appropriate name. And you can send either Brian or myself a message. And furthermore, if you'd like to subscribe to the weekly essays written by yours truly, you can accomplish that feat by visiting systemfailure.org and entering in your email address to receive the essays each and every Sunday morning right there in your email inbox.
All right, folks.
All right. Well, I'll be back on Thursday with a quickie. Brian, you and I will be back with a regularly scheduled 1 week hence. I can't wait to talk to everyone then. In the meantime, hope you're having a great week.